Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Outgrow's Marketer of the Month. I'm your host, Dr. Saksham Sharda. I'm the creative director at outgrow.co. And for this month, we're going to interview Kieran Flanagan, who is the SVP of marketing at HubSpot. Thanks for joining us, Kieran.
Yeah, great to be here. Thanks for having me.
So, Kieran, we're going to start with a rapid fire round just to break the ice. You get 3 passes. In case you don't want to answer the question, you can just say pass. But
Okay.
try to keep your answer to one word or one sentence only, okay?
Okay.
All right, so the first one, Godfather or Star Wars?
Star Wars.
How many hours of sleep do you need to function?
5.
What's your favorite carb? Bread, pasta, rice, or potatoes?
Pasta.
Most embarrassing moment of your life?
Pass.
What does the acronym SCUBA stand for in scuba diver?
No idea. Pass.
What's your ideal outside temperature?
Oh, wow. I don't know. Cold.
All right, favorite type of muffin?
Blueberry.
The first movie that comes to your mind when I say the word ambition?
Wall Street. Money never dies.
The city in which the best kiss of your life happened?
Pass.
A habit of yours that you hate?
Anxiety.
And the last question is your favorite Netflix show?
Um, Ozark.
Okay. All right. Well, that's the end of the rapid fire round. You got 7 on 10, so you win a card. Just kidding. You don't win anything. But we're gonna go to the we're gonna go to the long form questions now. The first one is: as a Sequoia scout, what current industry changing trends would you say are attracting major VC investments?
Yeah, I think the areas I stick to are really the areas that I know. So product-led growth, SaaS, Web3. I think all of those are still growing. I think all of those we're still at the early stages of innovation, in particular in Web3 is obviously at a very earlier stage than cloud and SaaS and product-led growth businesses. So I can't speak to the full range of all of the things that different scouts within the Sequoia company and program actually invest in, and the different sectors that they spend time in. I think as a good investor, you try to invest in the things that you understand, and so for me, that predominantly is cloud, SaaS, a little bit more of Web3 because I spend a lot of my time there, and they're the kind of businesses that I enjoy spending time with and getting to know and invest in.
And speaking of industry changing trends, why do you think most tech companies will look like media companies in the future?
I think most tech companies, I think media is a great investment for most tech companies. If you look at a lot of the different trends that are happening all together, it's never been more expensive to do paid advertising. CPM costs have gone up each year over the past number of years because we've just seen a record number of companies being started. And so when companies being started, they're very reliant on paid advertising in the early days. If you look at venture funding, there's never been more venture funding. I think there was record venture funding allocation in 2021. I think 2022 may slow down. Haven't seen the correlation or the comparison to 2021. 40% of all VC money is actually spent on Facebook and Google. And so a lot of that VC money goes into advertising. So that increases the competition within paid advertising platforms. You saw during COVID, a lot of businesses kind of pivot their money from offline activities to online advertising. And so you see the cost of CPM going up. So it's harder to reach people through paid advertising channels. There's a lot of decline in the amount of organic traffic from search over time. Like Google has really optimize those pages to keep people on those pages or to keep people clicking paid ads. And so you see a decline. We see a decline in the amount of organic traffic we can get through the different positions on page one in Google. So a decline in click-through rate on organic search listings. And so it's increasingly becoming harder to like figure out how we can reach our audience. I think one way you can do that is invest in media and really become a destination for your audience. Like how do I how do I be a place where my audience want to consume content each and every day? During COVID, digital content actually consumption increased 4x, so 4 times the amount of content we started to consume online. So digital content is really just part of our daily lives. And I think what tech brands have an opportunity to do is really invest in media and build the media products that people want to come on and engage with day in, day out, whether that is your blog, your newsletter, your podcast, your YouTube channel, whatever kind of medium is the right medium for your audience.
And what role do you think community-led growth plays in all of this? And what do people get wrong about community-led growth here?
So I think a community-led growth is somewhat different. So I wouldn't conflate them. I think there's maybe some overlap. So community, like we should try to define community because it's defined in many different ways. And so tech companies, there's not like one clear definition of community, but I'll kind of go to what people mean by community-led growth. So historically, there's three types of communities you can build as a business. You can build a community of product, which is the kind of community that most brands build for their products or services. I build a community of customers who can help other customers be successful on my tools. And that is the most common type of community you see tech brands build. There are other two are like a community of practice where we build communities around knowledge. Like you join a community because you want to become better at something, and there's people within that community who can help you. And then a community of interest and hobbies. And so you actually want to join a community because they share the same passion as you. I think community-led growth is so community of product is really I interact with your brand in some way. I become a customer, use your product, and then become a community member. So community as at the end of that flywheel. In community-led growth, community is like ubiquitous across the entire flywheel. So community helps attract people to your brand. Like it's the first interaction they have with you. It helps people onboard to your product, and then it helps those customers stay engaged with your product. So it's actually across the full kind of flywheel from acquiring customers to activating them to onboarding them onto your products to retaining them. To do that, you actually have to get really good at building communities of practices, which is like, how do I build communities around knowledge so that I actually teach them something before they ever need my product? And so that is what community-led growth is. What was this? What was the second part? I want to make sure I answer
And what do most people
that
get
question.
wrong about community-led growth?
Oh yeah. Okay. So what most people get wrong is actually they really underestimate how hard it's going to be to do. So community of product is actually much easier to build because there's no real competition. Like you are building a community around your product, so you're the only community of that type. You don't have competitors. You don't have like competitors trying to build a community around your product for the most part. But community of practice, like if we build a community around knowledge topics, then anyone else can build that community, right? And so you imagine there's a ton of companies who are trying to build a community of practice around the same topics. Now they're actually all competing with each other for those people to join their communities. And so it becomes much harder to build a community of practice because you have much more competition, and because all companies will eventually want to build communities in the same way and actually have large amounts of people coming into the community before they ever use their products and services. There's going to be much more competition. The other thing that people get wrong is it's really going to be hard to turn community into a really core acquisition channel for your product. And so if you really just kind of just do the math, let's say that we had 10,000 people in our community, which is a lot of people. Actually, that would be a very successful community. It's really hard to build community. Anything above 1,000 people gets really hard to manage because communities are at their best when they're smaller because people can interact with each other in very valuable ways. They become much more complex where they get bigger. It's harder to drive engagement because there's so many more people in there and you're trying to cater to so many more needs. And so if we say we can, oh, well, like let's say we can build a community of 10,000 people, which is very common in Web3. We can go into why they've done it so well. Um, if you kind of just do the math and look at like how many of those will be weekly active users, how many of those will actually click on something and go and sign up to my product, it doesn't become a meaningful part of how you acquire customers at those numbers. You actually need probably hundreds of thousands of people in your community, not thousands. I think it's very, very complex to build a community that big. So I think one thing is community-led growth, much more competition than people probably think, much harder to do than people think. And actually community-led growth as an acquisition channel, you actually need far bigger numbers than you probably realize to make it a sustainable part of how you acquire people into your product.
So, what advice would you give to a SaaS company for going about community-led growth?
I think you have to know why you're doing it. All right. I think that doing things just to do them is never the right way. So I think if you have a core, you need to kind of start with how is this valuable to my customers? Like, you're always trying to solve for your customers. Like, how can we fill a need that they have? If you're just trying to recreate a community that already exists in the world, it's going to be very hard for you to turn that into something that's meaningful for your business. Most tech brands don't even really have a successful community or product. Like, they haven't even mastered, how do I create a community around the product that I offer? And so I think, first of all, being able to master that is really important before you start to actually think about, how do I master a community or practice, or a community of interest. A community of interest and hobbies is not really applicable to B2B. It's more applicable to B2C. And so I think that they really want to start with, how does this solve? What problem is this solving for our customer? What opportunity do we have to solve that problem in a way that actually will help to drive a large community? And then, what are our goals for the community? Like, do we want this to be a place where customers can come, get more knowledge on the product, and our goal is really to reduce the amount of humans we need in the customer support channel, because that they'll get most of their support from community? Do we want to actually be the go-to place for this topic of knowledge because it's relevant to our product? And we just want to build up a large community because we believe by having a large community will increase our kind of word of mouth referral, people talking about our products and services because they're learning from us. And so you want to have a clear goal in mind. You want to have clear customer insights of why that's a goal worth having, and what problems your community can solve for the customers that you're trying to service.
And how exactly would you contrast this to product led growth? And to what extent is product led growth supposed to be about acquiring new customers, if at all?
What's a product led growth? Community led growth has kind of stolen its name a little bit from product led growth, but product led growth is easier to define, I think, in terms of, I don't think the community led growth is a perfect like for like to product led growth. Product led growth is basically, how do I put product at the heart of my go to market, and I acquire people through a product, I activate them through the product, I onboard them, and then I sell them my product, all through a touchless experience. And so, good examples of companies who do that are like Calendly, Loom, Miro, Evernote back in the day, Notion. Like, there's these kind of companies that have these tools that you can use for free, then you can start to use through their onboarding, and buy touchlessly without having to talk to another person. So, like, it's the consumerization of B2B. And so, product is across your entire go to market. So community led growth, that's the definition I get, right? It's like, we've kind of done it with product, and now we believe that community, which used to be at the end of the flywheel, used to just really be a customer delight tool, can actually be part of our entire go to market. And I think that it's easier to build a product led funnel and a product led business than a community led go to market. I think community led go to market is going to be much harder to build than a product led go to market. We can get into why that is if you want. The listeners would be interested in that.
And so, what has it taken, to scale one of the largest customer acquisition engines in B2B?
I think we can leave tactics to one side, because I think we can talk there's just, everyone talks tactics. And so I think some of the things that actually are kind of gotchas in when you're trying to build a very large customer acquisition engine are, and things you may not think through, is often it's not the new things that actually drive a lot of your growth. It's the things that you go deeper into and find the kind of couple of nuances that really, really matter. So instead of like trying to kind of peanut butter your resources across a lot of different things, you actually find a couple of channels that can drive uh, real meaningful growth for you. And you go very, very deep into figuring out all of the kind of absolute you go into very deep to find all of the things that truly, truly matter in being successful in that channel. So if you're saying, oh, like, I think the way that I'm going to grow is through search and content, then how do you go really, really deep and find all of the kind of core things within that channel that truly matter in terms of beating your competitors, in terms of differentiating you from everyone else? And so I think most kind of teams want to do everything at a surface level. Like, I'll do a little bit of this, I'll do a little bit of this, I'll do a little bit of this. Where actually what you're better doing is trying to figure out, like, what are the 1-2 channels that are truly going to matter. So I think going deep versus going, like, depth versus breadth, I think is really important. The other thing is, like, team alignment is really, really important. Like, it sounds really kind of boring, but actually making sure that you have teams who are aligned around goals, and making sure when you have those goals, you have teams that can be fully autonomous for those goals, so they can own those goals in totality. They're not dependent upon other teams who have different goals. When you grow pretty rapidly, what happens is you have a bunch of teams, they all have their own goals, but no one team can own its goal individually, and so they're all dependent upon each other. But because they have their own goals, they're all in conflict to each other. And so again, coming back to like real prioritization, what are the couple of things that matter, and making sure I align my teams around them, making sure they can be really autonomous to those and own those things in totality. So I think depth over breadth. I think team alignment is one of those gotchas. And then I think like everyone kind of knows like hiring, and so there's just like a big difference between good and great. And I think really trying to find some people who are truly great in the areas that you matter are going to not just have a large impact on your results, but have a large impact on how they can teach everyone else in the team to be truly great. The other thing that we do really well is we bundle everything up into like repeatable playbooks. So we build like what are the absolute truths of the things that matter, and then build first principles around here are the things that we need to excel at to build this thing in a repeatable, scalable way. And we bucket that up into a playbook, and we can teach that playbook to the entire team. And we kind of repeat those things until they no longer work. And so I think there are some of the kind of things that truly matter in building out one of those large distribution engines.
And so, what's been your experience doing this for? I guess you've done it for Salesforce and then Marketo, and now you're the SVP of marketing at HubSpot. So, what has been the trajectory here?
Yeah, like it's, I guess, how do I answer? So the trajectory is, each one is different. Each one is different. Every company has a different set of goals. Every company has a different kind of roadmap to get from where they are to where they want to be. I think the cool thing is that the problems just become more complex. Like the larger, the more amount of success you have, and the larger you get, the more complex and larger the problems are. And so I think that's the thing that kind of changes as you grow, and as the thing you do becomes more successful, is you have to just solve much larger problems, much more complex problems.
And you started off as a computer science major. So, what was the shift from computer science to marketing for you like?
I think, look, I think computer science and software engineering is around problem solving. Like, how do I find efficient, scalable ways to solve problems? And to me, when I went into marketing, that's how I kind of that's my was my approach to marketing is how do I find complex problems, like the problems that we're solving? How do I know they're a problem worth solving? What are the insights I have to show that they're a problem worth solving? And how do I build repeatable, scalable playbooks to solve those things? And so it's the same sort of thing. You pull apart problems, and then you find like really good, efficient, scalable ways to solve those problems. And I found that my background in computer science and software engineering was actually a really good background to have when I went into marketing.
And speaking of what you talked about earlier about hiring talent, so what is, especially in the current economy when everyone's talking about how hard it is to hire A plus talent, what is your thoughts on that?
I think companies, I think there's only a finite amount of A plus talent, and I think it's the interview process is a clunky way to find it. I don't think it's the best thing we have, but it's still a clunky process. It's much better if you can build A plus cultures. Like if you can actually build a culture where people can come in, learn, and do their best work and become an A plus player on your team. Like the reality is, even if you could have a process that always 100% accurately pinpointed A plus players, there's only so many of those people that exist, and so not all companies are going to hire like the A plus, whatever that even means. And so I think if you can build a culture and an environment where people are learning from each other, where you give support to them for those people to do their best work, or provide them with the kind of the opportunities to do their best work, I think that's much more important, or you're going to have a much better team overall, versus if you kind of have a team that there's these one or two good people and everyone else is like struggling to reach that level, versus having a culture where everyone can kind of rise and become good and A plus players over time together.
And do you think it's possible to build such a culture remotely, considering the debate we're having around remote work versus coming back to office?
Yes, yeah, I think so. Like, I think I don't even think it's really much of an argument. We've seen great companies operate remotely and great people within those companies. Great people can do great work regardless of location or where they do that work from. If you're a person who is not fully engaged within the company, you go into the office and you slack off work, then you're going to replicate that if you work remotely. If you're someone who's truly engaged with the mission, does great work, and you can do that whether you're in the office or you are working remotely.
Okay, and one question about, because you've mentioned several times in this interview, the flywheel, the marketing flywheel. So, what exactly are your thoughts on the traditional demand funnel collapsing in this era? In what sense do you think it's collapsing?
Yeah, I think the flywheel is just a recognition that your customers are your best marketing channel, and that we've underinvested in making sure that our customers are happy and making sure that our customers have an amazing experience with us. And the flywheel is like, if you acquire someone, you engage them, you convert them into a customer, then you need to have a delight stage to turn a portion of those customers into referrals for your business. And all the truly great businesses have a real engaged, successful, happy customer base that are willing to recommend their tool or product or service to other people. And so to me, this kind of does speak to the community part that we started with, which is, if you have a really great community where customers are engaged, happy, learning from each other, you're just going to have a much better flywheel, because a portion of those customers are either going to recommend you to their networks, or when they go to their next job, make sure that they bring your tool with you, because they are so, they're not just happy with the software, they're happy with the whole package of all the things that you provide.
Fair. Okay. So the last question is, what would you be doing if not this?
Um, that is a good question. I would like to think that I would have been building, like developing, but I actually wasn't a very good developer, so likely not be very good at that. And so I think I would have liked to, I would like to write film scripts.
What
I would like
scripts?
to write TV
Okay.
scripts, film scripts,
Okay. Oh yeah, same.
TV or film scripts. If I wasn't doing this, yeah.
All right, that sounds good. All right. So, well, thanks everyone for joining us for this month's episode of Outgrow's Marketer of the Month. That was Kieran Flanagan, SVP of Marketing at HubSpot. Thanks for joining us, Kieran.
Cool. Thank you for having me.
Check out their website for more details, and
Great.
we'll see you once again next month with another Marketer of the Month.